Well, hi there, all of you out there watching the show. And we're going to say something to anyone and everyone that is out there that's got something to say to us. We're trying to find out if the mic up. Is it not working out? Is it working? Can we hear what's going on? We are absolutely live. We can hear what's going on. I'm just going to write in here. Please type in any questions, and we will see what we've got to say. So we'll send that off to you. There you go. Please type in any questions. And we could end up having some fun on this. I'm just going to put my phone there. I am live, so we're certainly going to be able to chat about all the things that are going on out in the world, the great big wide world with coronavirus, keeping everyone at home, and maybe we'll end up having some sort of discussion as to what's going on. And you can all hear me, which is great. So that's a good start. And all I can say is that hopefully we get some of you on here, and that you are ready to be able to be involved with this. Nikki, nice to have you with us, and good health to you as well. I hope that you're in good shape and being able to get through this coronavirus. You sent me a question earlier about Durbanville, and you said that it seemed to be a place where good horses really didn't run to their best form. The one horse that I remember running to its best form at Durbanville was Terence Millard's champion, the Grey Filly, and she actually holds the course record there over 1,000 meters, which was way short of her best. And she was the Galloping Gold Mine Empress Club. She was fantastic. Have a camber into the straight, which means that the draw is not that important, but used to be vital to be drawn in the first 6 horses. But now it's not that important. So hopefully that answers your question as far as Durbanville's concerned. Just chatting about various things that are happening. The shocking news as far as loss of horses are concerned was the loss of Might and Power in Australia. He was a Melbourne Cup winner and a great big champion, New Zealand bred horse by Zabeel, a very, very good horse indeed. But even more important as far as the breeding worldwide is concerned was the death of Shamadal during the week. Now, Shamadal was unbeaten on the turf. He only got beaten in the Dubai in the grade 2 there on the dirt. He didn't run any type of race at all there. But Shamadal, a fantastic horse for the Dali operation for Sheikh Mohammed. And he's obviously the sire of, among others, Luke de Vega, who I thought is a tremendous sire, and certainly supported him in Australia. He's got some very, very nice horses there as well. So that's very sad news that Shamadal's gone, but he does have sons that will follow in his footsteps. This 2-year-old champion from last year in England, Pinatuba, obviously a cracking good horse as well, and expect him to be seen out when we get racing resuming in England. As far as South Africa is concerned, well, we have all types of interesting things going on here. The big chatting point is a stakes reduction, and the stakes reduction is going to affect everyone in racing here. It's down about 2/3 on feature races, which is very difficult for those guys that have got the very good horses. And I think that the guys out there have done a pretty good job in trying to make sure that the stakes keep to a reasonable level as far as the rest of the races are concerned. They've tried to make them uniform throughout, which gives the lower class horses a chance of being able to earn some money. So that's going to be of help. But we only look to be resuming racing in South Africa on the 1st or 2nd of May. That's when they intend resuming racing. If you have any questions you'd like to ask me, please feel free just to type them up there, and I'll answer them to the best of my knowledge. Just chatting about all things racing in South Africa. Obviously, the yearling sales have all been moved, and they're not being held at the usual venues at the usual times. They're talking about having a 3-day sale in October or September in August in Johannesburg, when they used to have the 2-year-old sale, and then a sale later on in the year. My thinking on this, well, I would have preferred to see a sale in October that spanned probably 7 days, one day of virtual sales where you could have had the ready to runs. You could have had a rest day in between. You could have made a racing festival in Johannesburg and run all the sales up there and put all the horses that are for sale in South Africa through a sales ring at one time, which logistically the breeders might not think this is a good idea. But when you think of it, you can get all the buyers at one place in one time, and you could run 5 days or 6 days of sales. You get the auctioneers there. The trucks would move up and down, taking horses back to their destinations after they've been bought and bringing new horses in. So that could have been a thought. And Bloodstock South Africa have obviously looked at all the angles. They've got some pretty good guys in charge there. And hopefully they'll be able to find all the answers. As far as the rest are concerned, well, let's see what's coming through on my phone. And Steve Reed from South Africa says, are we doing it? And I'll just send him a message saying that we're up now so he can come on. And maybe he'd like to ask us a question as far as what's going on in South African racing concerned. He's one of those guys that's pretty involved. Just gave my mic right. And we'd be pleased to have him there with us. Let's see what he's got to say. Steve? There's Laughs Owners. Steve Reed is there, and hopefully he will join us, because one of those guys that knows a lot about what's going on in South Africa and South African racing, and it gives us a chance to talk to people who are pretty involved in the racing here. I'm going to have a quick cup of tea, which is most welcome at this stage, because it's hard to talk for a long time, but I've been talking for 5 or 6 minutes. And as you know, I've been running a television show, Winning Ways, for many years. Unfortunately, what happened with Winning Ways was that Teletrack were not prepared to give us a slot, which we had on a Monday evening. And so as a result, we now have made ourselves into a YouTube channel where we would like people to subscribe and come online and be involved with us and chat to us about what they think. And we'd obviously like to see if you've got any comments or so he has to go live. You've just got to go live, Steve. You say can't see me. And just as up, you've got to go onto the studio where we're doing a live chat at the moment, webcam chat. So it is live in the studio. I'll put that out to him. Live webcam chat. And see what Steve's got to say. And maybe that will help him. There are a number of people out there who probably don't know much about what we're doing and where we're going and how we're trying to get this all online. I've got 7 people watching, so it's nice to have the 7 of you out there. And if there are any questions, horse sales, will they go down in your opinion? If so, could this have a knock-on effect for stable staff being employed? Nikki Henderson from the UK. I think horse sales will definitely go down. This virus that's traveling around is going to knock business badly. And as a result, I think there'll be less disposable income. And this will definitely have a knock-on effect on stable staff being employed, because I think stables will shrink. I don't know that it will affect the big stables as much as it will affect the smaller stables, because the smaller stables are the guys that are going to really struggle through this. They don't have a war chest of money available to them to keep themselves going, and most of them, having been a racehorse trainer and at the top of the tree and at the bottom of the tree, when you're at the bottom of the tree, you really struggle. It's quite difficult, and makes it, you don't have money to carry on from month to month. You pay most of your bills cash if you can, and as the money comes in, you then spend it on keeping the stable running. So with no racing and no income from winners and places and runners, I think there's going to have a very big effect on us. And I think if you have got disposable income, you're going to find that you're going to be able to buy horses very much undervalued. Certainly in South Africa, we think that the market is going to go down markedly, even though they've changed the sale to August. I think August is not a good time to have a sale. I know they've always had the national 2-year-old sale in August, but it's middle of winter, cold. It's not great being in Johannesburg at that time of the year. The horses don't look great because they all have winter coats. Lots of things going to make it very difficult. So, Nikki, I would think that horse sales will be down tremendously, and certainly gives an opportunity to people to buy horses in our country. And I think worldwide, you're going to find they're going to take a tremendous knock. So, the horse sales is an interesting factor, because we found in South Africa that the horses population of horses bred every year has come down markedly, and in fact we're probably breeding half the horses that we were breeding 10 years ago when we were in the good times. 2008 was bad. It knocked the industry quite badly with economic downturn. It picked up then to sort of 2011, 2012, but since then things have really not gone well at all. What else is there in the industry? Jockeys, I think that they're going to be getting the same riding fees as they've always got, but they're going to have to take a big cut in their stakes and what stakes have been put out there. Trainers, obviously going to lose a lot of owners. They're going to be a mass exodus of owners as far as I can see, no matter what happens, even if we get back to racing. We then have all types of problems here in South Africa with the bodies that control racing. All of them seem to be under huge fire at the moment, and I'm not sure that there's a way out of all of this. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? Because all you've got to do is type it in, and I will answer it as best as I possibly can. In the meantime, I'm just going to have a sip of tea and juice up for the next session. I hope the sound quality is good. And if we find that this type of thing does work, I intend putting it up every 2 or 3 days and having a chat every 2 or 3 days to anyone that wants to hear about what's going on in racing worldwide or in South Africa. And for those of you that have come on a little later, it's quite interesting. The loss of Shamadal, I think, is a huge, huge problem as far as racing is concerned in this in the universe, because he did certainly look like one of the best horses around. Let's quickly chat about how this is affecting the other players in the industry. I think jockeys are going to be okay, but they'll take a bit of time. Daniel said, how long do you think it would take the racing industry to recover from this shutdown? In South Africa, I think it might take years. It's certainly going to take a long, long time, Daniel. In the rest of the world, I'm not sure how big their war chests are, but you have places like Hong Kong that are still running. Australia is still running, so they're turning over money at this stage and they're gaining income. There's big problems, I would think, as far as Europe is concerned, because England is shut down at the moment, and I'm not sure when they're coming back. They're talking about another shutdown coming. France is in the eye of the storm, as it were, now. Italy looks like it's just starting to level out. Spain's starting to level out, but this industry is going to take a long time to recover. And the main reason is that it's a high-end market industry. High-end earners tend to invest in horse flesh and have disposable income. And I think everyone is going to be affected by this. Joe, nice to have you there. Do you think a horse that has run the last 15 times in a row can suddenly find form? Joe, I think that the horse has run 15 times in a row is never going to find any form except bad form. That's what will remain, bad form. But run last, that form continues. You know, it's like a horse that runs first 15 times in a row. You like to be with those horses. Northern Dancer, Secretariat, those type of horses. Is it enough? Is enough with Phumelela? Well, I would say so. I think that Phumelela has run its course. And just to go back in a little history, I was one of the guys on the owners and trainers that were told that the race clubs had to amalgamate. Our man Jabu Moleketi, who was a Transvaal MEC of racing at that time, told us we've got no chance of racing as we were racing in the race club format, and we had to form a company that went on the stock exchange, which was Phumelela. That was the basis of Phumelela. What is interesting about Phumelela, and I can tell you this as a fact, the development fund, when Phumelela was formed, had a war chest of millions and millions of rands. The 4 race clubs in Gauteng, and I'll only talk about them, and Transvaal as it was then, were Turfentine, Germiston, Newmarket, and the Vaal. Those 4 race clubs, 3 of them were in debt with bonds, overdrafts at the banks to the tune of approximately 30 to 40 million rand. The figure is not, off the top of my head, it was that type of figure. The only club that was in the green was Gosforth Park, which was very interesting because what happened was that when Phumelela was formed, none of the executives from Gosforth Park, and I'm talking about Wally Siegel and Willie Hart, were the 2 guys in charge of Gosforth Park, and they were both fantastic businessmen and ran a really tight ship. Graham Beck was the chairman. It was the best run race club in the Transvaal region. The others were all in debt to the banks. I think Turfentine had the biggest debt, followed by Newmarket and then the Vaal. And the development fund paid back that money to them. So out of their war chest of 70-odd million rand, the development fund made available 17.5 million rand for the grooms' accommodation, which Ian Jays kept on and on and on and on about. And Joe, I'm sorry to see that you're too fat for the races, but you can speak pretty well. So nice to have you there. Vivek, nice to see you on the thing. And I go in the live chat. It's shutting me out. It shouldn't be shutting you out. I'm happy, no longer punting now, saving the stress, is Paresh. Well, you'll be back soon. Anyway, getting back to what I was chatting about was this whole amalgamation which formed Phumelela. So all the debts were paid off. Phumelela was formed. The shares were floated at 50 cents a share, and the rest is history. At the height of its career, Phumelela was 22 rand a share and paying 10 cents dividend and a 10% dividend. And so they now have a lot of problems because the Phumelela share price is right down to nothing. So we've got a question from Greg Howarth. Does Phumelela and Gold Circle get a percentage when horses are sold at the sales? No, they don't. The sales horses are sold by the breeders through the sales company, and the sales company charges a percentage which keeps them afloat. So Bloodstock South Africa and the Thoroughbred Breeders Association are one and the other. One's the marketing arm and the other's the breeding arm. So they don't get any money. And nice to have Cats with us. And obviously we got to try and answer any questions that you have. Right. Paresh, the July will be run in 2020. Yes, the talk is that the July will be at the end of July. So that Champions Day that they have, which used to be the Gold Cup Day, is now going to be July Day, and then Gold Cup will be a month later at the end of August. So that's how they're trying to get around this. Paresh Maharaj, nice to have you on the chat as well. That's the sort of history, as far as I can tell you, about Phumelela. And the problem with them now is that they have no money left. Basically, the business was run to the benefit of the shareholders. They got the dividends, which were probably the best dividends paid on the JSE at any stage. And they never kept a war chest. They never put money aside. And now we have a big problem. There is no money in Phumelela from what I can gather. And unfortunately, it's dragged us all down with it. So that's my take on, what happened to Phumelela. And obviously, as I say, I was involved in the beginning. And I remember applying for shares in Phumelela when they went to the Opal application. And we got about 1/8 of our application, my father and I. And we were extremely annoyed about that because some other people got much better applications than they should have. Daniel said, I believe that there will be a reduction in stakes of the races that will also apply to the major races such as the July. Yes, that the reduction in stakes has been published, and feature races are running for at least 2/3 less than they were running for. So that's the feature races. The other stakes on ordinary races are down at least 40%. Just as an example, Kimberley is now racing for a gross stake of 22,500 per race, which makes it extremely difficult for those guys. And I feel extremely sorry for them because the Kimberley boys take a lot of horses from South African racing that are at the end of their tether or can't go any further. And they keep going to Kimberley, and these guys keep going with bad horses, not very big training fees and not very big stakes. And what they do, Kimberley, and this is where I really respect them, is they present a betting opportunity worldwide. And I believe, and I've always believed, if Kimberley was properly promoted as a racing center, it really could be quite viable. And since we've been doing this Winning Ways show, we've had 2 or 3 trainers who've come on and given us a run through of their runners, which has been extremely well accepted. And I've watched what these guys have got to say. We've had Cliffy Miller, Zietsman Oosthuizen. He helped with Bill Human's horses and he's now on his own. And Tini Prinsloo helped us. Jared Ruggers helped us. These guys have given us a chance of what's going on. I just got a thing here from Katsma, just to put the Phumelela problem in perspective. Over the last 10 years, Phumelela paid out 669 million to shareholders. Well, there you are, 669 million to the shareholders. They paid 10%, I think, a share. So when they're running at 15 Rand, you got 1.50 Rand per annum income, which was a pretty good return on investment. And if they put aside, let's say, 1.5% or 2% of that, they would have had a war chest of over 100 million Rand. And that's really what it boils down to. Now, I've got Vivek saying, please advise why try. I don't know what try is, but if you can advise why, Vivek, as long as I can see my messages. You've got to go on the live chat, Vivek. Go and see the studio, go into the studio and go live, and you'll be able to get on. That's what everyone else has seemed to have done. Katz, would that be the right type of spin on it? And that seems to have been the problem with Phumelela. High-paid executives, big dividends, and a few getting really rich over them. Nikki's put in, has South African racing ever had jumps racing? Well, yes, we did have jumps racing. We had a few races at Turfentine. We had them at Gosforth Park. We also had them the rest of the country in the early days. Scottsville had some jump racing, and Dermot Weld, the champion trainer in Ireland, came out and rode here. I do remember the racing at Turfentine because I had the hot favorite ridden by an English jockey. Was Nicky Henderson, your namesake's rider, and he fell 3 from home when he was leading the race, and it was won by Gail Foxcroft and another horse of mine. So we did have jump racing, and it was great fun. And I think jump racing a tremendous spectacle, and obviously loved Cheltenham, and have been on a number of occasions, and a great follower of your namesake, Nicky Henderson. So that really is a place to go and enjoy yourself. P, some straw bales to negotiate. Mitch Visa was the champion jump jockey. Oh yes, that's exactly right. That's Steve. Mitch Visa was the champion jump jockey there. They put up straw bales as their jumps. We had proper hurdles. We made the hurdles, and they were Nigel Riley rode a couple of horses for me. I think he gave one a run that was meant to win, so I wasn't very happy about that. But and Nigel Riley, the advocate, who now owns a lot of horses. Vivek, please advise why trainers enter horses into races, but horses are not ready. Some of these horses are short prices and affecting punters' pockets when the horses don't run to their ability. Well, having been a trainer, I can tell you that very few trainers enter horses in races when they're not what they think ready for that race. They might have long-term plans, and quite often you have lead-up races for big races where guys will put a horse in and let it have a warm-up, as it were, but it won't not be trying. It just might not have the profile for the race, and that's quite important to look at. And I think that profiles are vitally important when punting horses. You've got to look at a horse's profile, its win place profile, and you find that horses run within 200 meters either side of their best distance to very close to their best. But much further than that, unless they're champions, unless they see cottages, secretariats, those type of horses, those horses will run well over any distance. As I was saying earlier in this blog or this stream, the Galloping Gold Mine, she could run over any distance, and they win from 1,000 to 2,400 meters. It doesn't seem to matter to them. So the trainers basically want to win races. I can tell you that from experience. I didn't send out horses not trying. I sent out horses that might not have been ready for the right race. It might not have been the right profile for them, but we certainly tried to win races. And even those horses went out and tried. I remember very, very well winning a race at Gosforth Park, a maiden plate. I said to my owner, I didn't think the horse was ready to win and whatever, and he was a punter. And the horse won by a short head. And I can tell you, if it hadn't have won, there would have been a lot of trouble for us. But it did win, but we got a lot of trouble from the owner. Right, Joe. Go on, James. What really should happen is journalists should make the effort to find out the well-being and the intentions of the horses. Hong Kong have it spot on. Joe, you're 100% right. If we could get what I've always advocated for South African racing is the 6 hours we race. That's between 12 and 5 in the afternoon, or the 5 hours that we race. We should have a professional panel that actually preview and review every single horse that runs in every single race for us. So minuscule compared to the income generated on South African racing that we should be putting 110% into promoting our own racing and getting the betting public every opportunity to bet on those horses. Makes it difficult to deal with. You did right, you're difficult to deal with. I opened a bottle of champagne with this scrapping of barrier trials. Well, you know what? We can carry on ad nauseum about barrier trials. I believe barrier trials are a huge benefit to punters, and I really like barrier trials. I believe that they weren't properly used, and the reason they weren't properly used is that the rules around them did not give you a good idea with barrier trials. And certainly the people that were dissecting the barrier trials did not have the right tools to dissect the barrier trials. So we got a Nicky, I believe it, if read right, a year or two ago, Flamingo Park was struggling to survive. Could they be the wall, go to the wall now? Well, this is a question, Nicky, and I fought very hard for Flamingo Park to stay open for the very reason that I believe properly run Flamingo Park has an opportunity to as a betting medium. But the problem is that Flamingo Park is not given a proper opportunity as a betting medium. And as I said earlier, I think that the trainers are very willing to give the advice, and the advice is very good. Right, let's see what Steve's got to say. How do you read the racing landscape when Phumelela folds? There have been so many rumors about major players waiting in the wings to take it over. My take is simple. it's inevitable. The problem is putting together terms to fold Phumelela, because from what I can gather, people want to know why it happened, what happened. So they need a forensic audit. Apparently, that's not keenly accepted by the people that are in charge. Mohammed, nice to have you on board. They always talk about bringing in new blood. Why don't they just take care of the current batch of owners? I couldn't agree with you more, Mohammed. I think that owners are the lifeblood of racing, as are punters. And those are the two beneficiaries that racing have. Their money makes racing go round. You've got to have owners to buy horses, and you've got to have punters to put money on horses. And at the end of the day, if you actually look at it in the real light of day, they're the only payers in. The receivers are everyone else. We all make a living, whether we be a journalist, a jockey, a breeder, a trainer, whoever else is involved in the horse racing industry is making a living out of it. Punters like to think they make a living out of it, and I'm not sure that any of them do, but there are some that are clever. And certainly owners do not make money out of racing, and they're the lifeblood of racing. And I would love to see owners really be looked after properly. Right, for Vic, James, most of the jockeys come back for post-race interviews, but Anton Marcus comes back when he feels like it. The more info the punters, the better for pools. I love Anton Marcus. He's one of my favorite people, and I understand him probably as well as most people. And the problem with Anton is that he does have a problem with his weight, and he spends a lot of time trying to get his weight right. He does have a lot of good rides on race days, and he does get his leg over them. And when he gives us the feedback, his feedback is very good. But he is a bit of a negative, Anton, and he's never, ever said, this one I really think will win. So be that as it may, he's a great rider, and he's a great personality and a great person for the business. You've got to accept that sometimes he might not come back for interviews, but he does come back as many times as is possible. And on top of that, he doesn't have to come back. No one has to come back. Right, let's have a look and see. James, as you and I put your heads together above the line, do you fear that being victimized by the new co? I ask this because I'm speaking to people who are genuinely fearful, and I'm not going away just asking. Joe, I've never been fearful of anyone. I've said my piece. I fought with the best of them. I've won and lost. And at the end of the day, I believe I've got a contribution, and that's all I'm trying to do is contribute. I believe that the industry needs people to speak out. As a trainer, it was impossible because you were being victimized. There's no doubt, and I've been through it, so I understand that. But as an independent, it is my duty to speak out about this racing industry. And I really would like to be helpful to everyone and anyone concerned, and hopefully be able to take part in it. You know, my great friend Mike de Kock says keyboard cowboys and this and that and the other. And the other side of the coin is that a lot of people are very fearful of speaking out, and basically their only way of speaking is through the keyboard. I'm sure that everyone has got to have a say. And what you've got to understand in a democratic society, which very few are, by the way, is that people must have a voice. And if I can be the voice of people because I'm prepared to answer and put things on the table and discuss things, that's fine. And I do it because I really do not have any fear of anyone. I love horse racing. It's been in my blood from the day I was born. And I want to be able to be a mouthpiece and certainly a help to this industry if they ever deem me to be a help. I seem to be on the outside, and I'll stay on the outside for as long as they like. And Nikki, let's see. Mohammed spot on. I like they should keep what they have happy as well as bring in new folk. Well, that's right. We've got to bring in new folk. It's always the case. So obviously, Phumelela need a complete overhaul, which is long overdue and is forced. I'm sure accurate the process. Is the government involved with horse racing at all? Well, the government get taxes, so they're hugely involved. It makes a lot of money for them, and obviously you've got to have lines of communication open to the government. Unfortunately, the lines of communication between Phumelela and the government were severely damaged when the government said we've had enough of giving you back 3% of the tote take, and so you're not getting it, which is hugely distressing for the industry. Mohammed, without dwelling too much on the subject, but is it too late, James? Is everyone scurrying around because racing days are numbered? Make no mistake, I'm sick for the game. And we love racing. It's not numbered. It will survive anything. They raced horses for a sovereign when it all started. It was a betting medium, and it always will be a betting medium. And people love to bet on horses because horses are fantastic animals. If you go and look at them at the racecourse, you can be in awe of their beauty and their grace and their elegance. And some are good and most of them are bad. But at the end of the day, they all try their damnedest. And we try our damnedest to try and back winners. So we have fun with them. And there are a lot of characters involved. So, you get to all types of things happening there. Let's move on and say, Nikki, as an aside in football, please follow Wimbledon, folks. We all love Wimbledon. No, we can't follow Wimbledon. It's too close to Arsenal. Sorry for you, Nikki. You stick with Wimbledon. Right, Steve, do you think Riaan du Plessis is still involved behind the scenes as Big P? John Stewart, bless him, just looks like a rabbit in the headlights. I'm actually not in a position to answer that, Steve. Riaan was involved for many, many years, and we're not sure that things could not have been better done elsewhere. But John Stewart has taken it over. He was the guy who inaugurated the commingling of totes and built the whole tote system that we have. So John Stewart has played a major part in racing. This might not be his forte. James, if lockdown is further extended, we will lose our KZN season, or will we race behind closed doors? I'm sure that we're going to race behind closed doors, which gives us all an opportunity to be keyboard cowboys, as they talk about, and be able to watch the races from at home. Me personally, I love going to the races. I love seeing the horses. I love being around horses. I have lots of mates, as you know, and it's a great place to be. So we hope that we're able to race. If it's under lockdown, well, so be it. Let's carry on under lockdown and see what can happen. Are there anyone else want to have something to say? We've got 13 people on, which I think is tremendous for our first stream. Frank, nice to have you. Think the soccer pools took a lot away from racing? There's no doubt soccer pools took a lot away from racing, because at the end of the day, you have the punting rand and the punting pound and the punting dollar, and pools offered you an opportunity to win huge amounts of money. And that's why they were important, and they certainly should have brought us in a huge amount of income. I know they've talked about Phumelela having been kept afloat because the soccer pool's really doing well, and this is now a disaster as far as everyone's concerned. But when you look at the way the whole thing was set up, it was very well done, and soccer pools were an integral part of it. The problem was, and I really believe this, is soccer pools ended up taking center stage away from racing. And as I said earlier, I believe racing should be center stage on South African screens when South African racing's on. Nikki, I was unaware you were a trainer. Were you ever a jockey? I was a very bad amateur jockey. I had rides in England. I had rides here, and rode a couple of winners, but very ordinary. Joe, closed doors solves a very, very small problem. Social distancing means better shops are going to be closed or underpopulated in UK betting shops. So this is going to be a fact of life. And I think this is going to change racing for quite a long time. Betting shops, and certainly the totes, the off-course totes as we have them in South Africa, make it very difficult for the industry. But it's better to have some betting than no betting. So if you've got the product and the product is racing, you're going to have betting on it. The whole thing is to bring a professional slant to presenting the horse racing. And I can talk as a previous horse race presenter, because I did it for over 15 years and was the centerpiece of Gauteng racing as a presenter, and did see how they run all those shows I did. So I understand implicitly how to do this thing. unfortunately, the people that are in charge, in my humble opinion, do not understand. And they're chasing their tails, putting up things that are totally of no use to racing whatsoever. Vivek, I gamble with Interbet, just shout out about them as they live games on, keeping us busy. Oh yeah, listen, they're great. Interbet's it's a great betting medium. But Joe D'Amato says, I disagree. Soccer casinos get nothing to do with our current situation. It's a complete mismanagement of Phumelela as a business. Well, Joe, I'll tell you that I believe that the screen that we watch, which is Teletrack, as it is known, and I think you get international, we get local Teletrack. It is covered with soccer betting, okay? And soccer betting is promoted far more than a pick six in Johannesburg, takedown of Durban, or any other betting medium on South African horse racing. And I would definitely say South African horse racing needs to take center stage again. The others will all fall into line, and they'll all have their benefits, and they'll all have their protagonists, and they'll all have their players. But horse racing is key. And I know that Phumelela have always spun us this line that, oh, well, we're making so much money out of soccer. Well, where's the money? Okay, so racing is a wonderful product and must have the leadership to stand tall amongst the competition. Correct, Joe. Steve, hallelujah. Let's the new owners of racing do a deal with bookmakers, and let's focus on racing and partner with bookies who can then have exclusivity on sports bets. Pay racing a fair commission. Exactly what it's all about. We want focus on racing, not frigging sideshows. Bookies pay fair com for an open value bet, and we can build the sport, not having to pay shareholder dividends. I agree with you, Steve. I agree with everything you say. The screen is cluttered, but Bloomberg's screen cluttered with various commodities, but gold does not complain that silver. That's a totally different thing, Joe. And what I must tell you is that I know Phumelela have now phased Teletrack as a betting channel, and Bloomberg is an investment channel. But when we started this whole journey, the journey was that Teletrack, or as it was known then, was a horse racing channel. It's morphed into this betting channel, which now gives soccer priority and all types of overseas betting priority. My take, and it's simply my take, is we should, when we race in South Africa, have South Africa as priority. I know how to do it, but it doesn't seem as if others know how to do it. Right. Let's go and see what Nikki said. James and Joe, do you think racing is kidding itself, that racing is a sport that can survive without gambling? Some trainers UK think betting punters are not that important. Well, racing will never survive in the form that we know it without gambling, because you might end up in a situation where we were, how it all started, where Lord Derby and Lord someone else said, I bet you're sovereign that my horse beats your horse. Well, that might happen. That I'll say to you, Nikki, I'll bet you my horse will beat you. Here's my 5,000 Rand to say it, or whatever. Joe, James, this is what I must tell you. I have a bet like most, so that's the race I watch. I don't sit there all day watching the screen. The masses won't be watching the screen. Well, Joe, everyone has their own way of doing it. I must tell you, when I race, I watch every race. I watch every single thing that goes on the racing screen, and there are many people like me. There are professionals like you who are professional punters, will find one or two horses on a day to back, and you will back them. You'll watch replays later because you want to know where you can find more horses to back down the line. So you do watch racing, but you might not watch a sideshow. But the ordinary run-of-the-mill guy wants to watch something that is professionally put to him, so it can give him an idea of how to spend his money. And most people that bet on racing like to bet every race. They're going to lose their money. We know that. You know that. And I know that. But that's how they like to do it. And those are the people you've got to cater for, because they are the vast majority of the ordinary punter who really love this game. That's my take on it. James, what I must tell you, okay, punters are important. Right. Steve, owners' intellectual rights should be imposed and they should share in the flighting of SA racing on the international stage, even the money gets put back into stakes. But well, when this was all set up, Steve, I can tell you that's how it was. When it was set up in the beginning, the owners' intellectual rights were owned by the owners or the racing association as it became known. And the intellectual property was with them. And it should be vested with them. I know when I applied for colours for Equine Hub and we wanted to put a logo on, we had to get permission from the Racing Association to put the logo on. And so they do have some say, but I think they've given away the intellectual properties in the form of number cloths, in the form of branding, in the form of everything to Phumelela. Hopefully, when this whole thing reinvents itself, however it may do, all these things will be looked at and put into place in a way which is going to actually impact positively on horse owners and punters. They are, as I've said, they are the most important people in this business. Joe D'Amato says we old bullies. Well, good for you, Joe. You're not so young yourself, but certainly you hold us in the weight division. So I'm going to have a cup of tea. All right. What else have we got there? Now listen, we've had a pretty damn good chat. We've had 45 minutes of chat. And if there's nothing else that we can chat about, I'm going to do this every 2 or 3 days. Come on live. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that it's given you some food for thought. And I hope it gives you some ideas of how we should go forward in discussing this. And I'm not scared to take on the hot topics. I'm happy to take them on. And I just, Mike's just put up there, what are your views on the new RA? It seems like those before them, unfortunately, they're very sensitive to criticism. Well, Mike de Kock's on the new RA. There's guides there who are integral racing people. And I think that given the opportunity, they've got a chance. But the problem is that the RA got so entrenched with Phumelela that this is going to be difficult to get away from. And that's their problem. And on top of that, remember the RA's cash base revolves around Phumelela shares. Joe, do you think along with, or even without putting 13 million into Phumelela, should the new RA granted loans to trainers struggling? Trainers are professionals and they've got to run their businesses. I think that they could have made available loans to them if there are people, and I'm sure that if you remember the RA and you're a trainer in good standing, you would get a loan from them. That might easily happen, but you've got to have a payback scheme, and that's what it's all about. It's been a great show, and thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for joining me. I've enjoyed it, and hopefully we can build this further and enjoy it further. I'm hoping that this is going to make a difference. That's all that happens, and that's what we're here for. Thanks to all of you for joining me. Until next time, have a great weekend in lockdown, and remember, be nice to your family, be good to your pets, and best of all, use the time to catch up with people that you don't usually chat to. Give them a call on the phone, and they love having a chat. I know that's what I do every day, is try and chat to everyone. So have a good one, and that's the end from me. Until next time, I'll keep you informed. Just join us. Bye.